The political repercussions of the plague were serious for Pericles, whom the people now began to blame for their worsening predicament. Pericles had argued for the war and for the military strategy, which involved not challenging the Spartans in pitched land battles. With the entire Athenian population thus cooped up within the city walls during a plague, patience was wearing thin. Some of the Athenians wanted to sue for peace with the Spartans, even at the cost of their own freedom. Thucydides recounts a speech that Pericles gives to his detractors in which he urges them not to lose heart or capitulate under pressure. Pericles portrays the critics as being overly concerned with their private losses in the current situation, but he claims they've lost sight of the most important thing, the protection of the state, which is the very condition for personal success and well-being. Pericles reminds the people that they are at the head of a vast empire and that to maintain it requires great effort. But it's this very empire which is the basis of their wealth and private success. As in the funeral oration, he recalls the Athenian forefathers who were instrumental in creating the empire and passing it on to them for protection. This trust brings with it a duty that must be fulfilled if honor is to be maintained. He goes on to point out an interesting dilemma with respect to the morality of the empire. What's surprising is that he openly admits that the Athenian empire represents a tyranny. In the Greek sense, this meant an autocratic state run by a king or a tyrant, a tyrannos in Greek, in contrast to a democracy or an oligarchy. Pericles' point with this is that while Athens did not have a king, it acted like one vis-a-vis the states in its empire. The subject member states did not have any voting rights and played no role in determining Athenian policy. But he argues whatever one might think of this, it would be sheer folly to give it up, since that would allow all of Athens' enemies free rein to exact vengeance. He argues, quote, "What you hold is, to speak plainly, a tyranny. To take it perhaps was wrong, but to let it go is unsafe," end quote. The argument is a pragmatic one aimed at cynics and pacifists who might be against the idea of ruling others in an empire. The claim is that whether one likes the idea or not, one is obliged to continue with the policy for it simply for the sake of security. Pericles' words are later echoed in Book 3 by the Athenian general Cleon, who urges his fellow countrymen not to forget that their empire is a tyranny, or in our translation, a despotism, tyrannida in Greek, and that they must not give way to pity or compassion, since by doing so, they would bring themselves into danger. In that speech, Cleon singles out pity and compassion as the cause of great problems and the downfall of any empire. This recalls the negative understanding of pity in Oedipus the King, where the servant, out of pity, caused the great suffering of not just the immediate family involved, but of all of Thebes by saving the infant Oedipus. In contrast to the modern conception of ethics, to the Greek mind, empathy and pity are not good things. Thucydides recounts that Pericles' speech was generally successful and people threw themselves back into the war effort. But then, after a short time, their dissatisfaction returned and they fined Pericles for the calamity that the state was suffering. Then, in yet another reversal, they re-elected him to his post so that he can continue the war effort. In his description of this back and forth of Athenian public opinion, we can discern Thucydides' impatience with Greek democracy. He describes these events as follows, quote, "The public feeling against Pericles did not subside until he had been fined. Not long afterwards, however, according to the way of the multitude, they again elected him general and committed all their affairs to his hands." It's clear that Thucydides finds these events absurd. This is one of the negative sides of democracy, where policy can change quickly in accordance with the mood of the people. With the expression, "the way of the multitude," it's clear that he regards this as part and parcel of democracy. This is just the way people behave in large groups. Thucydides praises Pericles for his wisdom and foresight in the conflict. He claims that as long as the people followed his policies, Athens was safe. But when Pericles died after 2.5 years of war, things began to change as people abandoned his tactics. Thucydides portrays Pericles as the one man who could keep the private interests of the powerful citizens in check. But when he was gone, these interests took the upper hand at the expense of the state, and Athens began a downhill slide with a series of military blunders.